I love heading off on school camps. It's always such a stunning opportunity for teachers and students to grow and learn outside of their usual contexts. They surprise you. They try something new. They make a new friend. Sometimes they take the smallest risk by eating something new. Other times it's their first night sleeping away from their family, or their first night in a tent. I've loved the wilderness camps most of all. Those ones where we pack bags and support our kids to be brave, be challenged, to take a small step to a big achievement, and express their vulnerability within the context of a community moving together. There's always excuses though. My pack is too heavy. My ankle is sore. I've got a blister here. There's asthma there. And the Barossa and Region's Lutheran Education Hub principles were once no different.
I think in the early days, we were looking for reasons why not. And then in the later period, that got swung by these day trips and this collegial thinking to say, well, rather than looking for the reasons why not, let's why wouldn't we?
Daryl Trigg poses that question. Why wouldn't we? Well, for a principal in the network, it might be to defend your patch because they're too busy, because they don't have the resources. Lloyd Fife, who provided leadership of this group, knew the disruptive power of front-loading to shift the focus.
From time to time, networks need some front-loading. I think it's, you don't know what you don't know. And I think sometimes part of being a network is to share with others, but you need to know how to share. So to do some front-loading and do some activities together. So this is how we're going to do it. This is the task that we're going to do. Collectively, we learn from that, and we've grown as a result.
And then soon after that, Chris and Mary came in. I can't remember how they sort of popped up into the equation, but as ASA consultants, just offering some structure around things. They came in with some models. The models were talking about hikes and day trips, and how do you eat an elephant? Well, you start by one bite at a time. And so what are those little bites? And they were calling them, I think they were calling them day trips on a hike. And they had all these mountains, and it was quite a good graphic to look towards how you journey together to a destination. And I think then we started being more intentional about the little day trips. And the little day trips were springing up, and they didn't have to be structured.
Chris Prance and Mary Hudson, as Daryl mentioned, were the consultants brought in to help support this shift. I know from preparing for a hike that while it's easy to put things off, it's also easy to have a false sense of momentum when you're not quite ready for the challenges ahead. Chris describes the first steps that he and Mary led the team on.
When we took them on a history walk, and the BARLE attendees talked about what their journey had been like, some of them for a number of years. And that journey helped open up this is where we are now, this is where we've been, this is where we are now. What would we like to be in the future? And that was really exciting, because at that time we also developed some team norms about how we wanted to work with one another, how that would look. And that came true, because after the very first meeting, when Lloyd and Mary and I debriefed, we came up with the notion of where would the group like to go in the future based on what we were hearing. And that was where we came up with the building the ecosystem through a wellbeing lens, because it was the building of that ecosystem that would bring them together and open them to a broader picture.
As we've come to learn, the BARLE group have long been there for each other when they needed support, as Darren Altus explains when they first met.
Yeah, so as a group we meet we meet 4 times a year, And then, but it doesn't stop there. So, because you're building a relationship through this network, I'll be able to pick up the phone to any of them and go, hey, I've got some practice support that I need. Or I've just had a really bad day. Can you just hear me out? Or I've got this situation, I don't know how to handle it. Can you give me some advice? And so being able to connect with people and share ideas or share resources is really powerful, and helps you to know that you're not doing this on your own. You've got a team around you.
But the ecosystem that Chris speaks of is very different. In an ecosystem, there's an interdependence, constancy of interaction, and a combined health and vitality that simply being in a network of support doesn't quite reach. Our BARLE group, to reach that ecosystem level, began to look towards the challenges that united them.
I think too that some of it was about they weren't exactly sure where they wanted to go, but we had to discover that together. And that's where you two consultants, Mary and Chris, came in, and it was, let's talk about what it might look like, and here's some possibilities.
And this is where that false momentum can begin, where groups of people agree to work together and begin to map out their next steps. The power of leadership in the BARLE group was having support from the outside to develop the conditions required to tackle the challenges of the region.
And that's why the building the team norms was so important, because that was a very genuine attempt to say, how are we better together, and how do we respectfully want to work together so that we can grow together.
And so our diverse group of principals,
I think our group is made up of a really eclectic group of people.
Okay, so our eclectic group of principals, who for some time had operated as islands, come together and were supported to develop the team norms required to start looking towards the summits that they may want to tackle together. The temptation might be to reach for a map and to start the journey, but the success of this group is in the preparation, which turned the group from why would we to why not?
Yeah, so it comes back to asking the questions, why not, as opposed to why would we? So the island thing, I think that you said before, I think we've realised no matter which school you are these days, you can't operate as an island. It's too complex, too hard. And the LESNW motto of better together, it's true that we're better together, but it's equally true that the complexity of it all is it's not that we're better together. We can't do without each other.
And so the hub and facilitators needed to get a sense of what summit they were ascending and the day hikes that they would be undertaking. Think of day hikes as trial runs to get a better sense of the terrain. These are those moments when the internal champions, those leaders who are ready to move, go out and test new ideas. But here's the catch. The day hikers always return to the BARLE hub. When they come back, the group hasn't actually changed yet. However, these hikers share their stories. They build momentum, and they get people excited about what's possible. Real progress happens when you move from day hikes to the ascent. This is where the heavy lifting happens. It's where the school or group stops just testing the waters and starts a disciplined climb. They use data and everything learned to identify real problems and design lasting solutions.
The other thing that I think brought the group together was we as facilitators never forced the issue of what we should be putting on the agenda. What we tried to do is say, what is it that you would like to do together as one of the day hikes using the mountain and the change process? What is it that you would like to do together that we could do together? And it took quite a while for us to arrive at something that they could work on, which is the early childhood space.
That, what are the issues that we're all working on individually that we could really successfully collaborate on? And so the early childhood space just kept being referred to constantly. So the group decided that that was an area that they would really unpack. And it was amazing. So it was decided, first of all, they needed some professional input around early childhood, early learning, particularly play. So there was an initiative that was rolled out where not only the principals in the group, but early learning staff came together for a day or a half a day workshop where they got outside input, and Maria Taylor supported them, and ASA supported them, Libby Worrell. So there was this real commitment to, we need to understand this early learning space, and then we can work out from that point how we can collaborate together. So it's about learning together. It's about understanding the issues around early childhood. It's about problem solving together.
And solving problems together can involve a shared conception of a problem. But as Patria Booth, who's a relative newcomer to Lutheran education, shares, it's also impactful to have a shared conception of the child.
You know, I haven't taught in a Lutheran school in other regions, so I can't speak on that behalf. But it blows me away, just the richness of what we offer, that is about the child, the image of the child, which is number one.
To achieve this shared understanding, the leaders first establish routines for meaningful observations and interactions when visiting each other's schools.
Well, even this morning we had all the teachers, or principals, and we did this at Newry as well, going to see in a classroom to watch our educators teach. So that would have been none of us would have done that years ago. We changed too. That's something else we changed is, remember we said when we go to somebody's school, we're going to rotate this. And when we go to the school, when we go for a tour, we're going with eyes of critical friends. And we said we're going to give some strengths and we're going to give some suggestions as well. And even that made a difference in that space, didn't it? Because there was a lot of positive affirmation that came from there. And I guess that's how we recognise the difference in each other too, of they're nothing like what we are, you know. So I think that was important too. And we would have never done that years ago.
The leaders then undertook smaller day hikes, where they may have developed their own conceptions of play, or facilitated staff visits, or conducted their own research. Structurally, what makes day hikes meaningful was the way in which BARLE leaders could take low-risk excursions to further their understanding, which they then brought back to the group with a new view to the summit. What they've come up with will be launched soon, and it's a statement from the BARLE group titled Playful Learning Pedagogies.
So what emerged from that were things like, what is the image of the child in terms of the BARLE group of schools collectively? What's the image of the child? So Michelle Keller did some amazing work articulating that, working with the group to articulate that. What is the image? Then you saw today the pedagogical statement around play, which is going to be utilised across all the BARLE schools. So now we're talking BARLE schools believe this about the image of the child. BARLE schools have this notion of a pedagogical statement around play. So there's a real shared sense of purpose, and there are some really coherent and concrete outcomes.
As Mary explains, there are tangible outcomes that the group have developed that now reframe where they are today. In fact, at the meeting I attended, the agenda had shifted from the wording of the statement to what impact can we have with this statement? And that common statement of purpose and understanding.
You could sense straight away that they had a common purpose and a clear pathway of who they were and the direction that they wanted to go in.
I think too, we had to find our commonality, but then when we're saying these niches, like we are very different schools, even though we are 6 Ks apart, and we have people come to us for different reasons. And I think in the past there'd been a little bit of one school's ahead and the others are trying to catch up. And now none of us are trying to be each other. Like there's very much of a sense of we're not trying to be each other. So if our school doesn't fit a family who come in, we would recommend another school, and we don't see that as a bad thing because at least they're in a Lutheran school. So there's this appreciating the differences. And then when we want to tap into something like today, and like when we were looking at play, we recognise that Redeemer they do a playful approach, another school doesn't. We can tap into the playful approach there. And so we came and watched. We've got some, I would say, very good practitioners in play who we came and looked at today. But if we decided we were going to do a technological focus, we might go to a different school who we know are ahead with that. So there's an appreciation of the difference and using that to better each other, because nobody's going to copy your program. And in fact, we don't want us to be the same, but then we want to learn from each other so that we can all keep moving ahead.
The development of this statement expertly balances the school's unique contextual features within a broader ecosystem.
And I think we just want, no matter, who the child is, where they're from, what school they're from, we want all of the children in our Lutheran schools to have the best possible learning experience and that they can.
The BARLE Hub continue to navigate current challenges and future challenges, as well as operational and strategic matters. They look optimistically for solutions and opportunities.
Then the why nots became, well, why can't we have a PD day together, and why can't we do this, and why can't we do that? And those things have grown, and
Suddenly problems started to be seen as, if we're having this issue, how can we solve things together, wasn't it? There was just this change. And even I remember when we first talked about this expo, do you remember that, like in Angaston, and it was a child and youth expo or something that came across, I don't know, a few of our emails. And then we said, well, why wouldn't we present this as a group, like as a BARLE group of schools rather than Angaston promoting it or Newry? That was very different thinking that had happened before. And we even went to the bother of making maps, that showed all of our schools, and we were all there, all the principals were there. And I can remember hearing our staff talk about, wow, you're all presenting together. And then it started to be, well, that's when we started our PD days together as well around that.
And so the challenges faced by one school in the hub are felt across the ecosystem. And it's precipitated really interesting initiatives like the BARLE conferences, where schools from across the region come together for shared staff days. Tamara epitomises that why not mindset when she looks for ways in which her centre can be involved despite the logistical challenges.
For us, because we're relatively new to the BARLE group, like I said, we've been going almost 15 years as a centre, but we're only new to BARLE in the last few years. For us, it's been a process of working out where we fit amongst BARLE. So for us, while the other schools might shut down, we still have a business as usual. So for us, it's working out how can we make this work, which staff can we send, how do we join in with this in a way that still serves our community best. So for us, like I said, we'll definitely, I think this coming year be a part of that. It may not look quite the same as the school's involvement, just because of staffing and our community needs, but we'll definitely be involved.
While the BARLE Group has developed a shared pedagogical statement on play to continue to grow this as an area of strength in the region and implemented the BARLE conferences, they've also put together meaningful experiences for their kids in the schools.
I went to we had a year 5-6s all were part of what we called a BARLE day type thing, and we're doing a lot more together. And I think it's great because you go there, and for me, I see kids that I taught or worked with at Redeemer, and you start to cross over a little bit, and it is like they still feel like my kids, even though they're wearing a different colour uniform.
The beautiful image of shared responsibility for providing a Lutheran education is painted by the BARLE Hub. These principles are realistic though, for there's some big challenges that are facing schools, especially those in regional areas. The difference though, between now and a few years ago, the language has shifted. It's gone from no but to yes and. The BARLE principles are leaning into challenges and looking for opportunities.
I guess all learning from each other. Staff shortages, that's been another thing that's made us look differently. And just before, Darren said to me, it'd be good if we can maybe, as we're thinking about our next chapter, look at different models of sharing staff, whether we go for... and we've talked about this. We talked about this when we were at Gawler that day of staff retention. How do we keep people in the Barossa and some of these areas, maybe even the Riverland too? People don't want to move house to change jobs. Got an ideal spot here for how could we maybe even do like a sabbatical year of trying a different school. So I think we've seen the opportunities in that too, that might, some of the issues, the common issues that were drastic have made us open models that weren't there before too.
And how will they solve this? Well, that's woven into the fabric of the group. It's with a shared understanding of the challenge, the opportunity, and it's underpinned by meaningful connection and vulnerability. It'll involve individuals and small groups undertaking day hikes to develop solutions that they can share back to the group because they are better together.
And that's what we've talked about with ELC staff too, because they're so rare, of actually getting people up from Adelaide offering work across multiple sites.
And as we reflect now at the start of the year, with each of these leaders going back to their schools, I know they'll have their own challenges.
I've got a number of new staff next year, and what does that look like? How do we now create our new culture and our new norm and who we are?
The BARLE Hub, as an ecosystem, is there for them. That much is clear. But what exactly will things be like as they transition away from Lloyd's leadership of the group?
And I think that's probably a conversation that's going to happen in the future. Now that I've changed and shifted, there'll be a different change and they'll need to go through that process again. So I think it was self-constructed, but it was facilitated by people. So it's kind of, I don't think they had an absolute clear goal for what they wanted to achieve, but we're on a journey and we're happy to be together.
I'm sure, from my time with the BARLE Group, that their eyes are on the next phase of their development as a group. Years ago, they identified that things weren't as they wanted them, and collectively they elected to be guided by Lloyd Fife as an ecosystem firstly taking shape. On their hike up to the summits that they're facing, they're very much at a fork in a road as they say goodbye to their guides.
Our job was done when the BARLE Group were taking control of their agenda and that we could slip away.
These principles and their own strengths as leaders, as well as the strength of the group, means that this fork in the road represents two desirable paths that they'll be evaluating, and I know that they'll navigate that together.
I think it was demonstrated today when they're in the business of organising their next conference. They're between them how's this going to look? They're not looking, certainly to Mary and I, they enjoy some outside coordination because that just helps keep it together in their busyness, but they're taking the initiatives. And that's been the major growth, I think, that we can look back on now, that they're moving along under their own steam.